Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending upon where you are in the world, and welcome to today's webinar, Protecting SAP Data with Managed File Transfer, hosted by SAP Insider and presented by Seeberger. I'm Steve Paul, and I'm your moderator today. We have just a few announcements before we begin. This webinar will require Adobe Flash Player. You can download the latest version by referring to the link on the screen here. If you are familiar with SAP Insider webinars, you will notice a change to our console look and feel. You may now maximize and minimize all elements of the console, from the slide area to the speaker bios, the Q&A, resource box, by clicking on the green or blue icons in the upper right corner of the box. If you do minimize an element and you want to see it again, just click on the icon across the bottom of the console. This webinar is designed to be interactive between you and our presenters, and later in the program we'll ask for your feedback. You can participate in our Q&A session by asking questions about the information presented in this webinar at any time. Just type your question into the Q&A text box located below the speaker bios on the left and click the Submit button. We'll answer as many questions as time permits after the presentation. This event also includes audience polling. Polling questions will appear, and please answer them as they appear, and thanks for your participation. You may enlarge the slide window at any time by clicking on the green icon on the upper right-hand corner of the slide area. The slides will advance automatically throughout the event. And you can also download a copy of the presentation by clicking on the link in the resources box in the bottom left corner of the console. And at this time, we recommend you disable your pop-up blockers. If you're experiencing any technical problems, please visit our webinar help guide by clicking on the Help question mark icon on the bottom right of the console. And if your slides are not advancing, please press the F5 key on your keyboard to refresh your console. And now on to the presentation, Protecting SAP Data with Managed File Transfer. Discussing today's topic will be Mahesh Sheth, Lead Consultant for L&T Technology Solutions, and Bill Metello, Vice President of Business Operations for Seeberger. First, we'll hear from Bill.
Well, thank you, Steve, and thank you, everyone, for joining us. Today, we're going to discuss the risk of not having a complete data security policy and processes in place and ways that we can address these risks. We find today, in speaking to hundreds, if not thousands, of companies on this topic, that very few people have really done a thorough risk analysis on their data movement. Most companies still rely on legacy FTP servers, email systems, and so forth to move sensitive data. And this really is leaving you exposed to costly data leakage disasters. And these data leakage events, breaches of security, have been well documented to cost millions of dollars per incident. So today what we want to talk about is what we can do about that. And let's talk about the SAP environment. We find that with SAP shops, there's really 4 levels of risk. There's the SAP to SAP movement of data. And for the most part, this is very secure and very controlled. There's the SAP to legacy movement of data, and we see the risk ratchet up considerably here. But still, for the most part, it's internal. It's behind your firewall. So your risk to the outside world may be minimal. You do have internal risk, which we'll talk about a little bit more. But again, a lot of FTP is used here, but we're starting to see many companies adopt secure FTP, SFTP, and implement that, and those are some good options for that environment. And Seeberger can certainly talk to you about that. But when we move to the 3rd level, SAP to external trading partners, again, we still see a lot of FTP, a lot of email being moved data to external trading partners. It's very unsecure, very difficult to apply policies here and so forth. And then the 4th level is when you get into human-to-human exchange or the ad hoc exchange of data. And here it becomes very, very exposed. There's very little control, very little way to monitor what's going on in your community. So Excuse me, let me go back. Just a quick word about Seaburger for those of you that don't know us. Seaburger streamlines business processes while helping companies reduce their cost. We do this through applying comprehensive integration suites that do both B2B and managed file transfer. These solutions offer visibility into your supply chain to maximize your ERP's effectiveness and help you innovate your business. And when I say how do we help you improve the effectiveness of your ERP or the SAP environment, you first have to remember that about a third of the data that makes a ERP execute its processes effectively does involve external trading partners. So that's the world which Seaburger really plays in. So we provide a unified platform that helps you lower your cost and reduce your implementation in these areas. So this unified platform helps you manage structured and unstructured data. It ensures that you have end-to-end security, encryption for all types of data movement, system to system, human to human, system to human, and so forth. We help you reduce the risk of data loss by people getting into your data or people inadvertently sending critical data to the wrong person. We reduce the costs associated with some of these legacy technologies like FTP, which can be very complex, take a lot of administrative time to set up and so forth. And finally, we probably maybe the most important part is we do help you enforce policies for data movement, including with systems like email systems, which are typically very hard to control. So let's talk a little bit more about, let's define MFT versus what simple file transfer movement is. If you listen to the analysts today that are following this topic, they'll tell you that MFT has the following components. Very secure communications, the ability to compress data, to have checkpoint restarts. Checkpoint restarts would be used quite frequently in areas where the connections or the networks are going down, they're unreliable. You have to be able to restart a transmission, start back at a point of failure so that you're not resending the whole transmission. Applying encryption. A workflow is very important to data security. Data security requires many approvals, routing, human intervention, and so forth. So an important element of MFT. Management of policies, roles, who has rights to do certain functions, and so forth, absolutely critical. And then, of course, you've got to have the auditing and logging. There's so much compliance that you have to deal with today. SOX, HIPAA, state laws, internal rules and audits, and so forth. All very, very important components of a managed file transfer suite. So when we talk about MFT, let's talk about the strategic challenges it solves. Providing visibility into your people, your processes, your systems, very important. Today, many messages are flowing through an organization, messages, files, transactions, without the proper visibility. Again, monitoring and including alerts for these same types of transactions. Security at every level. Adaptability is very important. You have a lot of systems, both behind the firewall and those of your trading partners that you have to be able to connect to. So that connectivity, that adaptability is very important. When you have a solution that you're rolling out to a trading community, partners, suppliers, internal warehouses, whatever it is, you have to be able to provision that community and rapidly onboard various systems and companies, individuals, et cetera. So the provisioning is very, very critical, very strategic component of these solutions. And then finally, workflows. You're automating orders to cash, procurement to pay processes, and so forth. Very critical processes to your SAP and your other ERP systems. Very important that you have a workflow and web services that can tie into your ERP's workflows and so forth. Today we're seeing a lot of demand for MFT that's being driven by just the sheer volume of data movement that we're seeing. All types of files, the variety of data is becoming very difficult to manage, and control and administrate policies around, and the velocity of the data that's new types of data that's being implemented is being greatly increased through greater collaboration with trading partners, with internal systems, inside and outside of the firewall. So generally what we're hearing from folks is there's just a greater pressure to provide access to data anytime, anywhere, on any device, and MFT is becoming a very critical component of that. So and one of the things that we see is because there are so many different types of data, there are many policies that are emerging within companies, and folks are at different levels of policy implementation. So with that said, I'm going to turn it over to Steve very quickly with our first survey question.
Okay, thank you very much, Bill. And we're going to ask a poll question right now. We'd like to know from our audience which of the following best describes your company policies regarding data security. Is it your policies are clearly defined and strictly enforced? Or general guidelines exist but are loosely enforced? Maybe its policies vary from department to department and application to application. Or you are unaware of the policies regarding the transfer of unstructured files. We're going to give our audience a few moments to share your results, and then we will show them to the audience. Thanks very much for your participation. And then we'll be going off back to Bill's presentation. So we're going to just wait a few more moments. Again, a mention to also feel free whenever you have any questions, please submit them to us, and we will get to them at the end of the presentations. Okay, Bill, would you like to see the results of our survey?
Yes, I would.
Okay, and Bill, just one comment, if you could speak up a little bit during your presentation, that would be great.
All right, certainly.
That's much better, and it looks like about a third are unaware of the policies, whereas 30% say they are clearly defined. Any thoughts about that?
I would say I'm a little bit surprised by the fact that 30% do have clearly defined policies. I think that's a very positive figure, because I think that shows that these topics are becoming much more aware within the enterprise, and that's certainly very, very good news from those of us that follow the business closely.
Okay, let's go on with your presentation then.
Oh, great. Thanks, Steve. So, again, it'd be interesting to correlate the policies that are being developed within these companies with what we see as key drivers for investment in managed file transfer. This slide, I don't have a source on here, but if I had to guess, I think this probably came from Gartner. But you'll see pretty much consistent data from all the analysts, and we certainly see it from our customer base. And the drivers for managed file investment are what you see on the slide there. They're data security, compliance, and cost control. The data security is the thing that keeps many of our customers awake at night, certainly. There's some pretty compelling statistics out there about what a data breach costs. There's an organization we work closely with called the Ponemon Institute, and they do a lot of research in the managed file transfer. And every year they do a pretty extensive study on it, and every year you see the cost of a data breach going up. You see the cost of a breached record going up. In 2010 survey, they estimated that about $7.2 million was the cost of the average data breach. I think that was up from about $6.5 million the year before. More information from that study, the average cost of a data breach record is $214. One thing that I find very interesting is I think when we think about data breaches, we think of hackers. But the reality is that 24% of the data breach issues were malicious, and whereas 40% of them were due to negligence. So, negligence is a difficult thing to create policy and enforce. But there are solutions that can help you with controlling what's sent out via email and so forth. And then 36% of the data breaches were due to system glitches. So I thought very interesting data there. So if you have $7.2 million per data breach, Aberdeen did a study this year, and they found that the average data breach per company, and I think they surveyed about 1,200 organizations, there were about 7 data breaches on average. What they categorize as best-in-class organizations around data security had 1 data breach on average, and then what they categorize as laggards had an average of 11. So, you know, if you're an average company and you don't have stringent data security policies, you know, 7 incidents at $7.2 million a year is pretty significant. So it's certainly eye-opening, and I can understand why a lot of the people we talk to are very concerned about this topic. Another interesting study I like to quote is one that Verizon, who did with the Secret Service. They did a study into data breach, and they found out that about 48% of the crimes are actually internal. So again, the requirement for policy and policy management is very critical, both internally and externally. Compliance being the number 2 factor, we're just seeing you know, there's been a lot of compliance-driven measures for years around data, SOX, HIPAA, and so forth. But what we're really seeing is a lot of legislative compliance that's coming up that people are having to really deal with, and a lot of internal policies. You know, brand protection is a very critical topic that we hear from our customers. So a lot of compliance around making sure you're not releasing intellectual property or design specifications, you know, things that could impact the brand that marketing spends all those dollars per year on. Cost controls being number 3. But still significant. And a lot of the cost control has to do with things like trying to just administrate all the thousands of FTP servers companies may have to administrate, and the cost and the time and the complexity of managing those systems, you know, keeping the authorized users, going back, and most companies probably don't go back and remove data that sits on an FTP server, although you should, and when you do, it is a costly endeavor. So those are some of the things that contribute to cost factors. Let's talk very quickly about some of the compliance. I'm aware of probably about 36 to 38 states right now that have some type of data breach requirement, data breach legislation in place. For instance, if you are an employer in the state of Massachusetts and you have a data breach and the employee's data, who is a citizen of the state of Massachusetts, is breached, you're subject to penalties and fines. And we see that type of legislation popping up everywhere. So you have state legislation, federal legislation, you have internal policies that you have to contend with in the area of data security and lockdown. And so today when we go into companies, and most companies, as I mentioned before, that we walk into, most of their data movement is still FTP and email, and it's very difficult to manage those things. So we talked about the cost, and I just want to spend just a quick minute here on taking a closer look at FTP. And those of you that manage a lot of FTP servers, connections, exchange a lot of information, I'm sure you're aware of how much time and how complex it is to maintain these connections. They're risky because often the data is unsecure, it's in the clear. They're complex because many times you're dealing with undocumented scripts and processes. Expensive because it's people time to provide the administrative rights. You have to then go back, shut it off. If you're wiping the data clean, somebody's doing that. So a lot of inherent cost with the FTP spaghetti that we see in organizations today. In addition, FTP doesn't always or very rarely verifies sender and receivers, and in many of these cases we are starting to see people using secure extensions like SFTP. But again, a lot of the solutions that are out there are point solutions, and they don't holistically manage all your file transfer processes and so forth. So when you talk about what the picture looks from the FTP spaghetti to an environment where you have a comprehensive integration suite that is doing business-to-business transfers, is doing managed file transfer, and so forth. The one thing that we often hear from customers is that the biggest benefit that they get out of this is there's a central place for the managed, the connections and all the trading partner management of both structured and unstructured data, whether the exchanges are human to human, system to system, and so forth. So that having that one platform to control everything, to give you visibility into everything, very important.
Excuse me, Bill. Just before you go any further, I think we do have another poll question. I also wanted to make sure that you're in the Present tab so that you can see that. But if that's okay, I'd like to ask the audience our second poll question.
Yes.
Okay, and great. So we'd like to know from our audience, at your company, what is the most commonly used method for moving large files from one system or individual to another? Is it email, shared folders, or on an internal network, managed file transfer solution, individual FTP processes, USB thumb devices? So we're going to give a moment to get some responses from our audience. Please share your experience with your colleagues, and we'll show the results shortly. Okay, and we want to thank you all. Results are coming in fast and furious, and we will reveal them in a moment. And again, one more time, Bill, if at all possible, if you could speak up a little bit louder during your presentation. Our audience is certainly eager to hear every word.
Okay, certainly, Steve. How's that?
Great, great. Okay, would you like to see the results?
Yes, please.
Okay, so looks like, a little over a third say shared folders on an internal network, and then about 31% individual FTP processes. Any thoughts along those lines?
I would say that's pretty consistent with what we've seen, so that there's no big surprises there.
Okay, great. I'm going to push the next slide out to you, and you can wrap up and then turn it over to Mahesh.
All right. Thank you, Steve. Okay, so the final slide before I turn it over to Mahesh, and again, I'm not going to sit here and read these, but this, I think everybody has the ability to download the presentation in a PDF form. This would be a good slide to keep for maybe a later reference, but this pretty widely accepted views of the differences between file transfer protocols, FTP, and managed file transfer systems. I would guess that on the poll slide, the network drives that are network positions that people are leaving data, it's probably a lot of FTP that's being moved around on. So use this for your future reference. And with that said, I'll turn it over to Mahesh. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Bill. Hello, everybody. This is Mahesh Sheth here. I'm from L&T Infotech. Over the next few slides, actually, what I'm going to talk about is some of the real-world scenarios in which you can see how MFT can be applied and can be used in order to solve some of the business challenges which you are currently facing. So I'm from L&T Infotech. And L&T Infotech is a global IT services company. We operate primarily out of India, and we do have development centers in U.S. and Germany as well. In terms of the verticals which we focus on, we do focus on oil and gas, manufacturing, and BFSI, and we do have a presence, which is pretty much across the globe in terms of our customer base. In terms of relationship with SAP, we have actually a multifold relationship with SAP. We are a services partner to SAP. We are one of the largest user base here within India. And we also do a lot of co-development along with SAP. We're also alliance partners with Seeburger, and through this forum, essentially, we are actually sharing some of our thoughts in terms of how the solution from Seeburger can be used. And the scenarios which we're actually going to present primarily are having SAP ERP as the central system from where we want to actually send across data or receive across the data. Okay, so the first scenario which actually I'm going to talk through is involved in one of our customers, which is oil and gas major. The company is actually having operations across the globe, and it has a pretty huge ERP landscape, which is actually through their data center primarily in the U.S. But having said that, they definitely need a lot of interfaces and a lot of integration locally with different countries, and that's where the complexity of the data exchange comes in. Now, if you see in the diagram, I'm not sure if it's too visible, but essentially the idea which we wanted to communicate was that the data which needs to be passed across from the ERP to different locations across the globe needs to pass through a lot of hops across the WAN, and essentially also through a lot of firewalls through different partners which are spread across the globe. Now, we have actually implemented solutions for this particular company which we're talking about, and in terms of the data transfer, we had loads of challenges, primarily in terms of transferring huge volumes of data across the WAN. We had network issues there, and in terms of ensuring that the data is, or the data file is transferred completely and reliably. That's one of the challenges which we kept on facing. In addition to that, when it comes to data exchanges across secured and sensitive data with banks and other partners, ensuring security on the wire is definitely another challenge which we had to face, and we've been giving solutions around that part of the challenge. So in a nutshell, it's a pretty complex landscape in terms of the number of files which we need to exchange, as well as also the complexity and the sensitivity of the data which we want to transfer across on the wire. The next scenario is primarily in terms of a pricing solution implementation for a manufacturing customer of ours. Here, again, the sensitivity of the data comes from the fact that it's the pricing data. So we have a pricing software, a pricing implementation in which the price of a product is decided, and then ultimately it's passed on to our SAP ERP, where the execution of the order and the rest of the OTC process happens. In order to actually exchange the data with this particular pricing solution, there is a lot of file exchange with the SAP ERP, as well as in order to get the data into the pricing solution for different transactions and analytics. There's a lot of file exchange again happening there as well. So the volume of the data which is getting into the pricing solution is pretty large, and again the same kind of challenges which I just mentioned in the previous slide also were something which we had to address in this particular scenario. Just to touch upon again, I'm sorry for the slide part of it. In the manufacturing company, they typically have a SFTP as one of the requirements which was laid out to us in terms of that's the particular path to be followed. And then in that case, even though we had PI and other middlewares, we did face issues, and then MFT would have been an ideal solution kind of a thing to be implemented to take care of the entire file management scenario out there. The third scenario, which actually I just wanted to, I'm not sure I'm not sure. Steve, can you actually help me out with in terms of which slide is the audience able to see, because there's some kind of disturbance on my side?
Okay, what's the title that you'd like to appear, and I can show the people.
Yeah, I wanted the slide which talks about the bank interface, the payment
interface. Okay,
correct.
I'm going to push that out to the audience right there.
Thank you. All right. So the last scenario, which we've just picked up in order to showcase how MFT can be used, is more for a customer of ours. Again, and this customer of ours is more from a perspective in which we have a bank which has various corporate clients, and the corporate clients have multiple SAP ERP instances with which we need to integrate. So here, in terms of the complexity of the interface of the data exchange, again, the data exchange is through files, and the format and the order in which the data needs to be exchanged. All of that is defined by the bank, but in terms of the sensitivity of the data, and again, the security of the data on the wire, as well as the implementation time for the interface itself, those are some of the critical factors in the solution, and we've observed that MFT would be an ideal choice in terms of handling such a scenario to ensure that we get the business challenge addressed out there. So the idea here in terms of these 3 or 4 scenarios which we just showcased was to make sure that you're able to relate in terms of some of the interfaces and integration scenarios within your enterprise, and in terms of application of the MFT solution itself within your enterprise. The scenarios shown here are only some of them. I mean, these are not necessarily the only scenarios in which you should or think about, or you would land up using it, but these are just some of the ideas in terms of where it can be really used. So that's all from my side. Over to you, Steve.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. And we're going to have our third and final poll question for the audience. Which of the following objectives is most relevant for your organization? Is it the adherence to data security policies and mandates for governance or compliance, the reduction of disparate FTP processes, compliance with new trading partner security requirements, i.e. banking, or controlling the amount of data taxing email servers? So again, this is our third and final poll. We appreciate your participation. Make your selection and share your experiences with your colleagues, and we will share the results shortly. And just a reminder, we will have our audience Q&A session coming up after the presentation. We already have a number of good questions, so keep them coming, and we'll get to those shortly. Okay, and Mahesh, would you like to see the results of our poll? And we're going to bring Bill in as well. And it looks like, wow, over 50% say adherence to data security policies and mandates for governance or compliance. Any thoughts, gentlemen?
Again, I don't see any surprises. I think maybe the reduction of FTP processes is a little bit lower than I would have expected, but certainly a big focus on governance, which is no big surprise. So.
Okay, take it away.
Okay, well, thank you, Steve. So this slide kind of gives you a big picture of what MFT might look like in an SAP environment. A complete end-to-end file transfer process with governance. So, for many SAP shops that we work with, and at last count that's been about 2,500, we again, keep in mind that our focus is with an SAP shop generally is very, very tight, very geared, very focused on business-to-business integration, moving files securely, both inside and outside the firewall, interfacing with SAP systems, with SAP PI, which is a middleware product that we have many adapters for, and so forth. So we get involved in the complete end-to-end transfer, translation, and integration of messages and files in the SAP environment. And really what we're hearing from our customers is the more commonality I can have with using PI, with using Seaburger in combination with PI, so that I can reduce my cost, my complexity, my training expenses, having one place to go for governance and workflow, it's all very critical. So we're very comfortable in this environment, and Mahesh gave you some examples of where we are working with PI. But if you look at this drawing, this is, there is no one size fits all with with SAP in most of the organizations we deal with. A lot of times we'll work with SAP PI, and we provide functionality to PI for things like SFTP, AS2, which are file encryption formats and so forth. But often what you'll see is PI managing the SAP applications and some non-SAP applications. But when you start to bring in the third-party applications, often we're using SFTP to secure those file transfers. In many situations, there's a requirement to have an endpoint front-ending, maybe in a human resources application, things like that. So, these are all tools that a common platform, if it's a very robust MFT platform, should be able to do for you. As you move outside the firewall and you start to trade with your trading partners, you may have the need to translate data or just do it in a pure pass-through, but you'll run into many different protocols on a global basis. To date, we've probably worked with 60 different communication protocols that we support, depending on if your trading partners are in the U.S. or Europe, Asia-Pac, and so forth. And, of course, I think the demand that we really get from our customers is to have visibility complete end-to-end, visibility of the files going out to the trading partners, coming into SAP, working their way through PI, and to a final booking stage within SAP. So complete end-to-end visibility is very critical there. Let me change files here. And I'm just going to touch very quickly on a couple Seaburger products and kind of close with who we are, just so those folks that would like to speak more to us get a sense of who we are. But Seaburger basically has products for all areas of managed file transfer and business-to-business integration. But focusing on the MFT product suite, we have kind of three areas that we help companies with. We have within our business integration server, we have adapters that pretty much support any major communication protocol that you're going to find, whether it's SFTP, it's AS2, it's connectivity into OFTP2 for the automotive industry and so forth. So support of about 60 major communication protocols. Many times your trading partner may not have a way to secure their connection in a system-to-system exchange. So we have a product called C-Link, which is an endpoint that can be given to, it could be a warehouse system behind your firewall. It could be a external trading partner. This agent helps encrypt and secure the transmission. It also allows for things like basic translation and so forth. And then the third kind of pillar of our MFT suite is what we call CFX, which is a system designed to bring managed file transfer and governance to human and human-to-system exchanges, these ad hoc exchanges that are so hard to control sometimes. So this is actually a plug-in for your email system that applies governance, and it works in conjunction with your email system, so you don't have a separate user interface, but it can restrict people from sending sensitive data. It can apply governance, and it has roles and accountabilities for everybody using the system. In addition, those people that you're sending email to, you can permit them to receive this sensitive data and things like that. So all three of these extensions of our MFT run on our core integration server to give you the governance, the policy management, and visibility, checkpoint restart, things like that. Very critical features for a managed file transfer suite. So who is CBurger? Just very quickly, we are a leading B2B and MFT provider, ranked by Gartner, Forrester, and the leading analysts. We are a German company headquartered in Germany with our North American headquarters in Atlanta, Georgia. We have 19 worldwide offices, about 8,500 customers globally, of which about 2,500 are SAP shops. Comprehensive solutions for B2B, MFT, business process management, community management, and so forth. The company just celebrated its 25th anniversary, so we've been around. We're a very stable organization, focused on certain key industries and standards, and as mentioned, the analyst coverage is pretty extensive of CBurger. So in our core products, as we mentioned, are scalable for companies of all sizes that do require business integration and managed file transfer. We are compatible with many ERP systems, although most folks know us as a major SAP partner because of our strength in the SAP world and the fact that SAP does resell some of CBurger's technology. So we do provide support of pretty much every known B2B standard that's out there, with a very strong focus on tools that help you drive 100% trading partner integration. One thing that I do want to mention is we do provide solution extensions for SAP for many industries, including automotive and utilities. One thing that is very interesting that I think we do is we have a supply chain monitor that does track the messages as they flow through the SAP system. So it's a dashboard that sits in SAP that tracks your messages after they've been interfaced to an IDOC structure and make their way to a final booking stage. It's a pretty unique process. And finally, we do deliver our solutions on-premise, in the cloud, hybrid solutions of those two, whatever makes sense for the customer. And with that, Steve, I'll turn it back to you.
Okay, very nice. Great presentation, much appreciated. And we're going to segue into our audience Q&A session, but before we do that, we'd also like to ask the audience to please fill out a feedback form survey that will shortly open on your computer. To complete this form, please press the Submit Answer button at the bottom of the page. Thanks in advance for filling out this form. Your participation in our survey will allow us to serve you better in the future. And here we're going to push this out, so hold down your Control key if you have pop-up blockers on. And there you go. And now on to the question and answer portion of our event. As a reminder, to participate in the Q&A, just type your question into the text box located below the speaker bios on the left, and then click the Submit button. And we'll answer as many questions as time permits. So we're going to start off with our question here from Richard. How would users who are used to receiving a spreadsheet via email get the spreadsheet via MFT? Is that for Bill?
Okay. Well, in the system that I'm familiar with, which is the CBurger system, the product that we would use to automate that is our CFX product. And basically, it is a email plugin where you define the policies in advance. So if the user, from the user experience, it looks very, very much like they're using the email system. But what happens is we interrogate the message. We look for topics, in criteria that we've set up. In this case, you would set up the criteria. You would grab that file. It would, from the user's perspective, it would look very much like they're sending an email. But what happens is you have a permitting process. And you would have to permit the user on the other side. They would get an email. They would click a link. They would, use login and password information, and then they would be permitted. And that's how you establish that secure process that actually is going around the email servers, but it's allowing you to administrate your policies and your governance.
Thank you. A question here. How is MFT different from SFTP if we are transferring data within the firewall of a company?
Well, the term MFT really, if you think back to that slide I did in the beginning where the analysts kind of define it, the analysts have really kind of created the product category of MFT. And MFT to manage, the focus being on the managed component, right? And the managed component, to really call yourself an MFT suite of product, you have to have these governance and policies that you're able to implement along with the visibility and the rules and so forth. So it's much more than just a pure file exchange. And even certain file exchanges may have a security component to them, but they might not have a way to, give you the visibility and the governance and the control that a full-blown MFT suite does.
Okay, and I think we have time for one more question. So here it is. Is C-Link meant only for internal communication within the network? If it's external, how does it communicate with different systems? Does it need a plug-in or application installed?
Well, good question. It does. It can be internal as well as external. It is actually a thin client that is downloaded that secures the going both internally or externally, and there are options that you can choose, but basically what it does is it is a secure connection with encryption. You have a passing of encryption keys and management of that and so forth. So the thin client is downloaded, it's opened up, and again, if you recall some of the strategic challenges of MFT that we spoke about, one of them was provisioning. The tool does come with portal technology that really automates that provisioning of somebody coming to a portal, filling out passwords, etc., downloading it, and it's a thin client that can be installed in minutes. So.
Okay, and I think we can squeeze in one more from Ed. Does this system handle standard EDI transactions?
Yes. The answer is yes, but it doesn't have to be a full-blown EDI system. So all this technology is built on Seeburger's core business integration suite, and one of the basically features you turn on in the biz integration suite is the ability to do the data transformation, of which EDI is widely used within the EDI, or the Seeburger customer base. Of the 8,500 customers we've spoken of, I have to believe probably 7,000 of those are processing EDI transactions. But the point I want to make is the MFT requirement can be implemented without replacing your current EDI environment as well.
Okay, well, very good. Thank you. And that is going to be all the time we have for today's broadcast. So if we didn't get to your question during this live session, someone will follow up with you in the next few business days. And for more information, please refer to the links in the contact information that appear before you, and you can also click on that in the resource box. And thank you for attending today's webinar, Protecting SAP Data with Managed File Transfer, hosted by SAP Insider and presented by Seeburger. Shortly after this live event, we'll send you an email reminder so you can access this presentation on demand. And on behalf of our guests, Mahesh Sheth, Lead Consultant for LNT Technology Solutions, and Bill Metello, Vice President of Business Operations for Seeburger, thanks for your time and have a great